Chapter 22, The Conclusion, but not the End. Reading through my story, I hope that you've come to realize that our plans in life, they sometimes change. In the end, that's okay and may actually be the best part. Even putting together the stories of my life has been different than I imagined it would be. There have been many times, as I recalled the events from my life, that there was quite a bit of emotion still there, just under the surface. I'm sure you heard that. Those times when I wrote that I needed a minute or two to get a hold of myself, those were very real. That was not my original plan. My idea was to sit down and tell the stories in a very matter-of-fact way. Well, I was wrong. It wasn't that easy. As I made my way through the stories, I occasionally thought about this ending. At that point, I intended to write a couple chapters on topics that mean a lot to me. I'd put them in my notes as I wrote with a plan to return to them to wrap this book up. I almost completed a full chapter on one of those topics before I took a step back. Once I considered the flow of the book itself, I decided to conclude this book a little differently. I will mention those topics in this conclusion, but I won't give them entire chapters of their own. Maybe I'll write another book and give them a spot there. I simply wanted to keep this particular book about my life in general. That type of ending just made more sense to me. Going through my life as I did, I hope you could see the people who influenced me the most in my life. I certainly tried to give them the credit they deserve. One of the concluding chapters was about them. Specifically, I had planned to write about the tremendous impact coaches, mentors, and role models have on all of us. This is an area I hope to pursue more in coming years in my personal life, especially with young adults. I've been blessed to be in and out of the lives of many young men and a few young ladies in my life. Almost all those situations came about because of my children. Having any influence or impact on their friends is a responsibility that I do not take lightly. I know the power it holds. I remember it very well from the people in that same position in my own life. My life has been filled with men and women who shaped my thinking, work ethic, and beliefs in ways I'm afraid I could never repay them for. I can do my best to thank them while I can, and I hope I've done that. If you're in that place in someone's life, please take some time to see the power you hold in their life. It's a beautiful thing, but it can be wasted and it can be ruined. If someone came to your mind as you read that, well, now you know. Either take the time to thank them for what they did for you, or keep in mind the influence you have in someone's life. I can't imagine how much different my life would have been without the influences that I've had all around me. Honestly, I don't want to imagine it. One of the last topics I want to mention is the state of our relationships, especially marriages, in our world today. As I sit to type this, I realize I've had the honor, privilege, and responsibility of presiding over a few marriages in my ministry. I could write an entire book on the condition of our marriage relationships these days. I'm not okay with the way we've made lifelong relationships into disposable diapers. I realize there are some situations that make separation the best approach. At the same time, I believe we've made it too easy. We only need to look at marriage bonds that have lasted 30, 40, 50 years or more. They all had trials along the way. It's not out of the question for me to consider doing seminars on relationships and marriage in the years that follow the printing of this book. The best approach to me would to have Julie up there joining me. That'd make me smile in such a way that you'd have trouble wiping that smile off my face. There isn't a lot I can say here about it, but it is a central part of my life. Having an entire chapter or book devoted to it is not out of the question, and I recently put this quote on my radio ministry message. They were words from a man who was wrongfully convicted and spent years in prison. While he was in there, one woman wrote to him faithfully. He was eventually exonerated. Once he was free, he said this about her. When you have someone who believes in you, someone who will not give up on you, it allows you to believe in yourself. To me, that's what marriage is. Marriage is finding someone who believes in you more than you do yourself. Yeah, I believe we need a lot more of that. I put that section about marriage and commitment in here, not because I have to, but because I should. If you've completed this book, you already know how much Julie believed in me, and I did not believe in myself. If I have to pause here, you know why. Why don't we offer that to each other? I do not believe that we have slipped too far as a society. We can reclaim what vows truly mean. If I ask you, will you join me? I mean it. I'm living proof of the power of marriage vows and the power of believing in each other. It is because of those times that I can write this book and even consider doing a marriage seminar. It would not be because I've done it perfectly. Wow, goodness no. It would be because I believe men and women uniting together for a lifetime is the best plan of all. If we choose to work for it, and it will take work, our families, our country, and our society will benefit tremendously. That's an understatement. The last subject I want to cover before I wrap up this writing project and recording is photographs. May I explain how this idea came to me? It was a somber moment about 3 months ago. I had the honor of presiding over a memorial service for a man that I had worked with for 12 years. I knew him from work, obviously, but I also knew his wife and 2 sons. I did not know them intimately, but I did know them well. He talked about them often, and they occasionally attended a small church that I was leading. In many memorial services, they either have family photos pinned on a board or maybe playing on a TV screen. In his case, they were on a screen. This man, Joe, was actually 3 years younger than me. As the service began, the funeral director walked me down the aisle to the front. I've made that walk hundreds of times. This time was a little different, though. You see, as I said, I knew Joe pretty well. I'd spent thousands of days with him and around him. We made that walk down the aisle to the front, and I watched that screen. Photo after photo of Joe, his wife Dana, and their boys, Jacob and Jordan, just kept coming up on the screen. As I looked down at them, I saw photo after photo of Joe in places that I'd never seen him. He was posed for a formal family picture, and one on the beach, too. I could only see that same man living a life that I had never seen. That's all that I could picture. It made me think about how all of us have that life. Some people, most people, only see a very small part of the very big picture of our lives. That was Joe and his family, but it wasn't the way that I usually saw Joe. Those photographs really stayed in my heart and mind. As I said, I've had the honor of presiding over hundreds of funerals. I see those picture boards and TV screens all the time. The thoughts bouncing around in my mind took me back to times that I've made calls to families. I often need to contact them for information about the service. There have been times when they would simply tell me, well, we're just sitting here going through pictures. When I thought about the pictures flashing on the screen of Joe and his beautiful family, I thought of our photos, and it really hit me hard. Why do we wait until a time like that to go through our photos? Why? I'll admit, I'm a little sappy when it comes to those kind of things. I love looking at old photos. Sure, the pictures on our phones are fine, but the old printed photos are what I'm really talking about. You know, the kind that are a type of family history. The kind that make us laugh, or maybe even make us cry when we see them. They may be a thing of the past one day, but they aren't yet. Even if they're old photos on your phone, do you look at them? So I want to ask again, why do we dig through old photographs only when someone is no longer with us? Wouldn't it be better to have them there when we look at them? That is a silly question. Of course we would. Standing there that day, I could feel something inside me. It happened to be this part of this particular chapter: photographs. Maybe we can do a better job of looking at them when everyone can join in. Pick a hot summer evening or a cold winter day and drag out those albums. Yes, there will likely be some emotion involved if you come across images of family members who are no longer around. Who said that would be a bad thing? My guess would be there will be more laughter than tears. I have no biblical proof of this, but I've been told our emotions equal a third of our souls. Why in the world would we stay away from 1/3 of our soul? Laughter and tears are okay. I know the Bible says that. It's in Romans. Paul told them, laugh with those who laugh and weep with those who weep. So dig out those albums and go way back to those pics on your phones. Laugh a little, or a lot. Tears are welcome too. There's a power in those photographs. Oh, I know it's there. I felt it that day when I saw a dear friend's life literally flashing before my eyes. Now that I have all of those topics covered, it feels like it's time to wrap this project up. I have no doubt I will come up with dozens of things that I wish I had included in this simple story of me. Well, I'm okay with that and not telling you everything. The only way I believe is appropriate to wrap this up is with the people who are closest to me. Of course, it all began with Dad and Mom. Years have provided me with the opportunity to see things I simply did not see in my youth. Like many other things, I could write an entire book on the father-son relationship. My dad taught me more than I would ever be able to repay him for. Being a father myself, I realized that payment is not possible or necessary anyway. Dad will never see this book, but I wish he could. From my earliest memories, I always knew my mom loved me. If I could only write one line about her, that would be it. I have always known she loves me. Yeah, I've always been a mama's boy. Dad molded and shaped me, of course, but making certain that my mom is cared for is something I consider to be an honor. It's only been after writing this book that she shared a story with me that broke my heart for her. But I won't share that here. I don't have permission to share it. And it's also one of those stories that is simply too personal for public print. I will only offer this. I was just a newborn baby, and one of her relatives made a comment to her about me that shook her deeply. I believe it still affects her a little today. I could hear it in her voice as she told me the story from all those years ago. I would simply say to my mom concerning those events in life the following. The challenges that appear to be insurmountable trials are just opportunities and future blessings in disguise. I love you, Mom. As you read through the story of my life, you likely got the impression that we had the average American family. For the most part, that's correct. Being around as many families as I am in my life, I realize more than ever how all families are similar in some ways, but different in others. Having two older sisters was really a blessing to me. There certainly were times I wondered what it would be like to have a brother added in there as well. Those were generally times when I saw other brothers interacting and wondering how it would be and what it would be like if I had one. How would we have bonded? How would that have affected the way I went about my life? Most of those times were actually when I was past my time living at home with Dad, Mom, Kelly, and Angie. Looking back made me wonder, but not seriously and not for long. Maybe we all do that in some way. I was blessed with two beautiful souls who I am privileged to call my sisters. I cannot imagine my life without Kelly and Angie. I'm not sure any of us can grasp the power of the relationships we have as children with our siblings. From my earliest memories, I recall how much they loved me. I knew that when I was most terrified of things, and I could not explain them. I could barely crawl into their room and tell them my fears. I knew they would listen and not laugh. Yeah, I knew they loved me, and they still do. One aspect of life we simply cannot predict is how we will all change over the years. I have offered most aspects of my life in this book for everyone to see. Still, there are things that I will not share because they affect more lives than mine. My guess would be we all have some of those in our families. So I did not cover every trial we faced as a family in this book. The most severe incidents we faced as a family unit occurred when we were all adults. I won't say we've managed life perfectly because that simply is not true. I will say we've had some difficult meetings and issues to work out through the years. We've managed to do just that. And I will say it has made us much stronger. Growing up, I always felt our family was as strong as they come. When that dream appeared to vanish in my early adulthood, I had to adjust. I learned even more about communication and have tried to make it a cornerstone in my life. Kelly, Angie, and I do all we can to keep those lines open. I love my sisters deeply, and I know they feel the same way about me. Just knowing that makes all the difference in the world. I cannot give that to you in your life. You'll have to do the work. Mend broken fences, and most of all, let any siblings you have know you love and care about them. That part's up to you and you alone. It's not up to them. In the game of life, the ball's in your court. I suggest you play because I have noticed a couple of things in the God-given days that I've had. Life is quite short, and it's also very beautiful. I can say it is absolutely worth working for those relationships. I've seen families that are torn apart and cannot stand to be around each other. I never know the entire story, and it's none of my business. I will say, as an outsider looking in, it always makes me sad. Always. There are times when it's simply a part of your family. I hope that you'll do something about it if you can. Maybe break the ice, hand them this book, and ask them to read this chapter. Getting the conversation started can be difficult, but change won't happen in any aspect of our lives if we leave things the way they currently are. We cannot make anyone else change their mind or behavior. We've discussed that, but we absolutely are in charge of our own. I wish you all loved your siblings as much as I love Kelly and Angie. Most of these words have been written while sitting in my favorite chair in the log home Julie and I purchased in 1994. It's the place all three of our children came home to and where we still live today. If you're a parent, you understand how nothing can prepare you for parenthood. If you don't have children yet, you may have rolled your eyes at that last statement. You may hear parents say things like that all the time. You're not obligated to believe me any more than anyone else, but it's still true. Nothing can completely prepare you for parenthood, and that's one of the things that make it so amazing and life-changing. After typing all these words about my life, I find it difficult now to put into words how I feel about my children. Since I shared their individual stories in previous chapters, I won't offer the same details again. I mentioned writing from our home for a couple of reasons. One was just for the reference itself, but the other ties in to our children and where I sit as I finish this last chapter. Instead of my favorite chair in our home, I sit today in Luke and Robin's apartment in Appleton, Wisconsin, just south of Green Bay. We traveled up here for a long weekend visit, along with Jack, Jillian, and Taylor, Jack's fiance. This is my family, and I cannot describe that feeling. I believe we all have a tendency to think about the things we receive in life in a deserving sort of way. We work so we feel like we deserve our house, car, and possessions. We get some time off work because we put in the hours and we feel as if we deserve that time off. I set it up that way to say this: there is nothing I could have done in my life to deserve the children I have been blessed with or the love of their mother. Just watching them grow into the adults they are brings a feeling that words cannot touch. I have lived more of my life than I have left to live. As I proceed down the road of life, one of the greatest gifts I could ever receive is to simply watch our children live their lives out before my eyes. To me, it's not in the great accomplishment that we often pursue in life. I enjoy the simplest of moments as well. Luke, Robin, and I just got back from a walk around their apartment complex. The breeze was blowing, the air was fresh, and I simply got to spend time, precious time, with the people I love most in this world. Yesterday we drove up, and having time with Julie, Jack, Jillian, and Taylor is priceless to me. Our children continue what Julie and I began officially on July 6th, 1991. My heart is full. I am a blessed man. There is no other way to wrap up the story of my life than with words about the woman God brought into my life all those years ago. As much as I have attempted to put into words the love I have for Julie and the impact she's had on my life, I doubt if I've accomplished that. When I slow down long enough to look at the woman she is, it becomes difficult to control my emotions. On one hand, it almost brings me to tears when I think of the ways she's loved me unconditionally through the years. I also feel an incredibly strong emotion to protect her. Trust me, she can take care of herself in many ways, but that does not stop me from feeling the desire to keep the wolves of life away from her. Those wolves come in many shapes and sizes, but I will not let them affect her on my watch. She may, or may not, need me to watch out for her in that way, but I'm there beside her anyway. Those emotions are intertwined for life now. She's been my one and only my entire life, and I only know how to love her in that way. I will continue to say it. I am a blessed man. The pages of this book have told some of the stories for you to read for yourself about her dedication to me and to our marriage, to our children, when I was not someone that was easy to be dedicated to. Any strength I have today to present a message to the world is because she did not give up on me in our marriage. For me, it's very easy to draw a straight line from that first day hearing her bicycle behind me to knowing she could be the piece of my life's puzzle that made everything else come together. She's been my teenage crush, high school sweetheart, bride, mother of our children, and now partner in life's later chapters. On the way up to Wisconsin yesterday, we discussed the upcoming wedding of Jack and Taylor. Stories were shared about the early days after Julie and I were married. We talked about how strange it was to call her Mrs. Bettis, and how the fact that her future students would only know her that way. During that conversation, Julie shared this: I've been a Bettis for more years of life than I was a Houchin. While that's a simple truth, it was something I don't often think of. We often think of life and moments we live like it's the lottery. We look ahead to big wins. Maybe we spend too much time buying tickets just hoping for the big win. We pursue objects and desires in hopes it will change things we see as ordinary and mundane. I believe the best things in life are more like long-term investing with compound interest. It seems boring to put a little away for the future. We often say things like, that small amount can't possibly make any difference. Oh, but we are wrong when we say things like that. We're very wrong, actually. Just like our finances, it is the smaller investments each day that build a life, just like a savings account. It's only over time that we truly see how we've built something quite substantial. When Julie mentioned being a Bettis that long, it was like getting to peek inside our savings account after years of putting a little in. I was only driving, but it really got to me. Now that I've said that, it's time for a question for you. If we're investing our time in people and things, how do your investments look? Are you putting a little away as time goes by the things you want to see in your future? Or are you still putting your time in lottery relationships and ideas? Maybe you're looking for the big payout. With all due respect, good luck with that. As a man who has more blessings than I could ever dream of, trust me, make small investments in people who challenge you and who love you. I've lived in both worlds, and by God's grace, I managed to have people invest in me and I in them. Now I have the results of winning the lottery of life. I will humbly accept that award and defend it with everything that my Lord has given me. I close this out with a note of thanks to you, the reader and listener of my simple, and at times not so simple, story of life. If my story has helped you, first, I hope you would thank God. In my Christian walk, I can tell you that He deserves credit first. After that, you need to thank Julie, my beautiful bride of almost 33 years. Without her planting the seed of me writing, I do not see how this would have ever happened. And I'd like to ask you one last favor, please. As you set this book down, please go find a mirror. Look into your own eyes. Please don't look at the scars, blemishes, or things that you don't like about yourself. Just look into the eyes that God Himself gave you. Now give yourself a nod. Go on now. Give yourself a nod, like you would receive from someone who truly loves you. Maybe you were blessed enough to have a father that would smile and nod at you when you needed some confidence. It could be that you had a coach or a teacher recognize you when no one else even seemed to notice. In your life, maybe it was a grandpa or a grandma. As you look in that mirror at your own reflection, please give yourself that nod. Please. Wipe away any tears that may come, like the moisture that's been in my eyes a lot. Go on now, because the rest of your life is waiting. May the Lord bless and strengthen you. I'll see you at the finish line.